take a second to kind of go back to Rachel, that she has worked with so many companies in scaling around some of the challenges and thoughts around portfolio management.
Thanks, Becky. Yeah, so I love what Becky said about reimagining how we think about portfolio management, because I do think there's this historical approach to it, which says it only matters for you when you have more than one product. And as Becky has described, we think that that's way too late to be taking a portfolio mindset and approach to product management. So I work with a lot of different companies, get to see lots of different scaling environments as companies grow. But there's some very common things that we see across companies that are doing this successfully. And that's really how they think about the core elements of their business that allows them to then scale effectively, quickly, keep alignment in place, understand what's happening in the business. But we really think about R&D focused specifically in two areas. One is the processes and organizational structures around the design and development of the product. So think of this as the ideas and strategy side of the house. This is where we're thinking about what's our vision, we're gathering data, we're researching, we're learning about the market, about customers, about our own capabilities, and then we're designing a strategy around that to deliver high growth products. This is really the domain of product management and ultimately portfolio management, but this is where the thinking and designing and exploring happens. And then there's the part of the organization that does the actual design and development and execution, and this is the organization itself. And here's where we're thinking about the people and how they're working together, how they're aligning to work, how they're executing. And here's where we want to focus on building a high growth organization. And this to me is really the foundation for being able to do product management and then ultimately portfolio management. Because as organizations scale, the number of people, the number of ideas, the number of tools, the numbers of systems, the numbers of connections between people grows exponentially. And so if we can't figure out a way to put things into logical sort of buckets and align those elements together, we as leaders and as people in the organization trying to organize work will quickly be overwhelmed by the amount of information that we both have to receive and communicate. So when we think about setting up a really healthy R&D environment for scale, we think about one, everything should be built around teams. So we want teams that are well formatted. We know who needs to be on teams. We need to know if are all of our teams complete, and we want those teams to be really well functioning. So they have agreements with each other. They know how they're working. They have shared language. They have shared processes, shared cadences. And we want to organize as we scale teams around value. Now, companies do this in a multitude of different ways, depending on their products, their technologies, their markets. But you want to think about how our teams lend to value, whether that's product by product or by different elements of customer outcomes, et cetera. But we want teams to be organized this way. And you can see like everything we're doing is putting things into buckets, which makes it easier for us to gather data, transmit information, and organize ourselves. So teams becomes the lowest common denominator. We build everything around that. And then we also want to have clarity of the work itself. So if you go to the next slide, we want to really understand and have shared language around work. And so this is everything from true north, or that guiding function of the business, down to what a team is working on every day. And we want to know that when we say story, if that's language that we're using, that everybody knows what that means. We have a general idea of how big those things tend to be. We know who's working on them. Those things can roll up into something like features or epics. I heard on the last conversation, we were having this conversation about what are the words. And we really want to be consistent with that inside of our company, right? We don't have to use the same words as other businesses, but we need to use the same words within our own business. And knowing what these chunks are and knowing who has responsibility for them, again, lets us be more consistent in how we understand our organization. So when companies start to scale, we want to see these kind of structures start to really emerge. And that's going to make it so much easier to then have that portfolio mindset and think about, okay, how much do we want to invest in initiative A? we do that investment through the people that are working on it and the amount of time that they spend, and we can know the answer to those questions.
Right. Yeah, it's so true, Rachel, that, I think one of the key challenges that, not only, I experience, I'm sure you experience in the companies you work with, and, our customers sometimes run into that problem as well, is the difference in terminology. So in in the same company, different teams, they call initiative. Some of them are like features. Some of them are like really huge initiatives, like, year long or several quarters long. So having the consistency across the board, so we know, not only we know how things align to strategy, and aligning different buckets of effort and the similar size of the effort to across teams, hugely important.